Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm bringing you a 1 versus 1 game between Krankendau and jakulangski, but I'm not the only one bringing you the action. I am joined by Shadow Fury. How you doing, dude?
Hi, I'm doing all right, thanks. It's fun to be here. I have been finding out about this game a lot more and more lately, so it's definitely been interesting getting to learn Cosmonarchy.
Right, yeah, it's a very different style than I think. I don't even want to say anything. I just want to ask you, what made you take the jump in, right?
Because not true.
Right, yeah.
That is not, in fact, true. It is, in fact, very similar to a lot of other games that I've done.
Okay, tell me.
In weirdly different ways. But, yeah, no, because, like, the idea of having a game that eschews tech trees, or largely eschews tech trees, eschews supply limits, and focuses on having a fairly large roster of units that you're trying to mix in creative ways in order to deal with your opponent's composition, is actually very similar to a game that I used to cast a lot of called 0K.
Okay, yeah.
If you were to approach it from the Starcraft side instead of how 0K does it from the Total Annihilation side.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, the biggest difference is philosophy of automation. Like, 0K is like, automate everything. Cosmonarchy is like, no, we're Starcraft. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's do all the things that you can do in 0K, but do it yourself. It's interesting.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I know that there's a lot of... it's funny because I always love to hear what people compare it to, because there's some people who think it's very much... There's, like, similarities they draw from whatever RTS games that they have a lot of experience in, and, you know, there's a lot of people actually draw a lot of similarities between it and Total Annihilation style games, which is interesting to me, because it's one of those things where I haven't played enough of them, but I was more of a guy that liked the intimacy of and the significance of individual units, and I wanted to preserve that in Cosmonarchy, so basically giving you that outplay potential, making you have to micro that stuff, and that was one of the deciding visions of it. But still wanted the scale. Like, I wanted to organically achieve the scale that Total Annihilation style games often do. But you know, you've probably seen enough by now to know that there's still that rush potential, there's still that early game potential.
Yes, there is. Oh my God, is there? I will eventually figure out how to survive more than 5 minutes in a match.
Yeah, there you go.
I figured out how to survive more than 5 minutes in the tutorial.
Well, there you go, right? That's a big deal. The one thing that I will say about this match that we're about to cast is that since it is a mirror matchup, I'm always interested in what people think about the mirrors, so I'll probably be asking a couple questions by the end, but you're not super familiar with Zerg, as I take it? You haven't played too much of them?
Not CMBW Zerg.
Right, okay. All right, well.
So, forgive me in advance if I throw out old vanilla Brood War names.
That's fine. That works out just as well, because I'm sure there's going to be some people who, there's always people who check out these videos who've never seen it before, and they're like, what's the lurker doing? Why does it do that? Whatever. It's all good. Yeah. We're going to jump into Genesis Y. So. Yeah, exactly. Let's see what happens in this match, because, Krankendau told me that this is a bit of a messy game, which might be perfect for this sort of thing. So we're going to see him in the top right as the Maroon Zerg.
And bottom right, we have the Beaver Zerg of Y. 520.
Yep, that's right. That's jakulangski. He likes to have a bunch of different IDs. He's the kind of guy where you'll be in the lobby and you'll say, hey, say when ready. And he'll type when ready.
When ready?
Yes, yeah. Or, he'll say red. Or he's like 30 different things that he can throw out there. And it's like a Rolodex or not a Rolodex, a roulette wheel. He spins that to decide what he says,
Roulette decks.
There you go.
That's how you keep track of your contacts now. It's just phone roulette.
I do kind of wish.
I want to keep in touch with someone. John.
There it is. Just tap him in. I do kind of wish that we had really weird, like almost steampunk-esque stuff sometimes, where not necessarily in the aesthetic side, but I feel like organic or what would you say, analog technology is always cooler than digital
technology.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Having a lot more gears and spindles and stuff. That seems pretty neat.
I see that. Yeah, there's definitely a real style to that. It's very, very tactile, very transparent.
Right. Yeah. Not very efficient necessarily, but it's sometimes life is about more than efficiency. We are going to see.
You'd be surprised, but still. Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Now we're going organic.
Organic, yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, we're talking about ZBZ. You got to go organic.
It's all organic here.
The interested stuff that this map has, this is a map by BiddyB called Genesis Y. It's actually modeled after an ASL map, which is maybe confused Crank. I don't. He's off to the wrong spot of the map here to try to scout his opponent, or unless he's doing a proxy hatch, which, you know what? He did say it was a messy game, but I don't think it's that messy. Looks like both of our players going for similar-ish builds. opting for the Larvosk here, which is going to equip them with more larvae. And the map, you'll notice the choke here has 2 add-ons that can't really be, used in any way, but they do help to create tight walls. I haven't seen a Zerg try to do that, but it might happen in this game.
Just drop a Cesian just somewhere in there.
Yeah, pop in with the Ovaleth. That's something that a lot of people are shocked when they first see it. So,
one thing I did notice is that jakulangski did go for the earlier Larvosk.
Yeah, a little bit faster, perhaps.
Yeah, slightly faster economy, which we do see in the worker count. They are slightly ahead.
Yeah, that's right. He even lost his worker scout, and I'm not sure that Krankendau will do the same, but if he does, that'll put Jack even slightly more ahead. Defensively making some Quasilisk. So when you see the Quasis out, that kind of indicates to your opponent that you're not really going to be marching across the map per se, because what you want to do with those units is a little bit more slow pace. So you don't have to worry about an imminent attack, and Jack is just going to confirm that now that he has his own Quasis by sending out these early Zets. And you can see Krankendau realizing that. He's like, oh, well, I can't really move around with these really slow units, so let me just hold back and maybe see about expanding my economy. So we should actually be on track for a fairly reasonable, super early game, right? If you know anything about ZVZs and other StarCrafts, you know that they can get very silly very fast. But I feel like in this case...
it would be silly by now.
Right,
ZVZ and other StarCraft games build order poker, so this is actually just way more stable already.
Yeah. And that's something that I feel like is nice to have in regards to Zerg. I mean, it's still a matchup that we don't have a crazy number of Zergs playing the game relative to, I think the most popular race right now is definitely Protoss. So when we compare it to this, like PvP is actually much more volatile, funnily enough, with the way that people are super aggro. You look at ZVZ and it's a little all right. It's all right.
So jakulangski going for the early expansion. Krankendau, do I think over the timing attack? Definitely have the expansion behind it. They have the units to go for a timing attack. jakulangski is wide open. Only 4 Quasilists available for defense. And I don't think Krankendau realizes just how good of a position they'll be in if they attack, but going for it.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to go ahead and move out through the corridor. And this kind of tight angle here is a situation where if you can get to that ramp in time, Jack could have held the cliff advantage. You get that +2 weapon range shooting down the height difference, but not going to happen this time around. Instead, going to see if he can play around those bastions and actually turn this into a bit of a bastion of his own. Unfortunately, though, as you mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of Quasis here for Crank. He even has a couple of Zets for meat shields as he runs on in.
Well, jakulangski does have a better concave. The one advantage they'll have right now, concave plus defender's advantage. jakulangski might be able to hold this. Moment of truth starting now. Krankendau rushing in, getting this round on the left side. jakulangski losing half their army, the other half forced retreat back up the cliff. Expansion heavily threatened, gets up, not canceled. jakulangski finding a better position on the defense. Krankendau should be pushed back. Continue to reinforce. jakulangski able to get back on the cliff, gets that high ground advantage, pushes out, and Krankendau gonna be forced to get out of here. jakulangski's expansion will be up. Reinforcements of Krankendau are on the way.
Look at that, though, yeah.
But how much more are they gonna? How much damage can they even deal in the meantime? As jakulangski's reinforcements are up, stabilizing and forcing Krankendau back home.
Yeah, that one was really rough for Crank because he came on in and he was definitely thinking, okay, I'm just going to keep on, pumping the military. He's got his hatch on the low ground. It's already been making not workers, but military units. You can see that worker count difference in the top right. It's workers over military. So you have a 10 worker lead and counting for jakulangski, who has opted for the Ovaleth, and he's going to load up for a drop. Close map spy air, at least vulnerable in terms of the angle of attack. You're not naturally going to go ahead and secure that base south of Krankendau's main. So this could actually be a nice counter push, and Crank has to just sit back, be defensive, and wait for the worker count advantage to start to taper off a little bit here.
Oh, and not only that, Krankendau going for the Kagerants, going for the Sunks,
yep,
right up front, not realizing that drop's on the way.
Oh yeah,
that's going to be a nasty surprise when it drops.
Well, Quasilisks are so good versus workers. If this was Zets, you could kind of try to maybe drill and hit a couple of attacks or just leave, right? But the Quasis, they can even be inside the worker line, and you're not really going to be able to do too much there. Krankendau will try to push everything over. The drilling, it's doing okay. I think if Jack put it by the minerals, that would have been a little bit better. But still, that worker count difference is going to be pushed a little bit further back. It's going to take a bit more effort for Crank to salvage that. But hey, at the same time, no third base coming up for Jack without killing that Zeth. So a little bit of a whiff on that one.
Oof, now is clearly the perfect timing for it, too.
Yeah,
while Krankendau distracted.
Yeah. Now,
still does get down there. Krankendau remains ahead economically. So jakulangski I mean, not looking like they want to contest on economy. Looking like they really want to contest pushing out, getting Lechizlisks, or getting a Zorka Shroud, presumably for Lechizlisks.
Right.
And then if they can go for another timing off the third, that is 300 minerals not going to military units, and everything else is roughly equal between them.
Yeah. I mean, when you see that military count, at one point, Krankendau had something like twice the amount. I think it was like 40 to 20 or something like that. So that was before that first attack came in. Definitely had legs to it. Definitely lethal, but not lethal enough to give Crank the advantage, and the Ovoleth will just come in here and scout it. It will inevitably move over. One thing you can do, I try to remind people, is that if you have detection on a structure, you can click on it, you see the progress bar. You see everything, the same sort of UI that you would see if it was your unit or if you were in the spectator mode. So he can actually click on the Zorkas and see how soon it was going to be made. He could click on an egg and see what was making out of it. I'm not sure how much he actually did in that situation, but something that does end up having an impact later on. You might be able to scout it and see Lechizlisks coming, and then you know, okay, crowd control is what he's going for. But Jack has the Hydra then out, so he's going to be going for Hydras for now and see if he can just win in a mid-range engagement. And those kind of can win out. If you think about it, right, the Lechizlisks have to burrow before they can be useful, so the Hydras can absolutely snipe them down before then.
And not only that, jakulangski going for the push. Krankendau is going to be relying entirely on the circuits to hold this. Circus, couple of Lechizlisks. Front door is going to be hard to push open. It's definitely got a solid lock on it. jakulangski with the drop ready.
Interesting.
Going to be getting on all sides. Lechizlisks are not set up yet. Krankendau pushing in. I think a bit of trouble against the circuits. Won't be able to maintain that push.
Yeah.
But may be able to force a contain.
That might be the best that he can do right now. The Ovoleth flying over, it's empty for Krankendau. He's not going to be able to do much of a drop. He's got a Zeth patrolling on the left-hand side, so the map is feeling pretty dark. Wants to push out, does have the ability to do so. Remember, the Hydras here are trying to snipe individual units, but with no Ovoleth for detection anymore, jakulangski is going to be forced back. He wasn't even able to pop the Zoryus. And then with that, it makes a contact. You can see it speeding up those Zerg. That's what that green overlay is that shows up. As soon as the Zoryus hits a target, everybody else moves a little bit faster. So definitely got to watch out for that. A couple units being hemorrhaged on the way out, but with the cliff advantage here, it'll be Krankendau who's going to have to turn tail.
Cliff advantage is the only thing going for jakulangski right now. Krankendau looking to push up. Lechizlisks are barely in range, taking up the front of the lines, but jakulangski maintaining long enough to get detection back online.
Yeah.
As long as they can maintain this, but that third base is looking super vulnerable. Lechizlisks coming in will be able to wipe out the worker line without any effort. Krankendau, pretty much the only player here with an army right now. He said Zoryus coming in for jakulangski. Will be able to start holding, but the Lechizlisks are presenting such a major hurdle. Krankendau holding the line, oppressing that third base, and jakulangski will not be able to hold this third base. It is going down. That Hatrosk, as its days, its minutes, its seconds are numbered.
That's right. I mean, so many Lechizlisks have been made right now, and the ground army simply cannot compete. Jack going for 7 Gorgorkors in the production tab. Those things affectionately nicknamed the Flying Hug Monsters, Flying Ultralisks, whatever you want to call them. They're definitely going to be good for it. And remember, that Ovoleth is still lurking in the area, so those ones will be able to clear out the Lechizlisks, and I'm actually not sure if it's going to end up feeling like it was worth it at the end of the day. But look at this move from Crank. He moves forward, and the Lechizlisk is going to get into the base. It won't really do that much damage, most likely. The Gorgorkors will be more than enough to deal with it. Still gets 2 workers, which is nice, but the crucial thing is that it allows the Lechizlisk to charge into the natural, and that's a bloodbath, man.
jakulangski only having the Gorgorkors to defend against this. 6 Lechizlisks remain. Krankendau has done enough damage, but is forced back. jakulangski finally stabilizing the defense, but Krankendau holding that third position. jakulangski desperately want to get that economy back. That's been their entire game plan thus far, is winning on economy.
That's right.
And while the Gorgorkors are going to hold for a while, this is just a matter of how long it takes for Krankendau to build up the anti-air army they need.
Even a bit of a misrally for Jack's workers. Might be drawing some fire. Easy targets for the Lechizlisks, but Krankendau has traded out the army, and he's actually still behind in workers after all that. So many more rotations of workers only for jakulangski means that, maybe these Lechizlisks that are these survivors that are sort of flying around can try to work to deny more bases. But as for right now, it does look like Jack still has the economy. A couple of workers in the middle just getting executed on the way out for good measure. And Yeah.
I was thinking, oh, come on, Jack, just take out that lurker. Your Drollists are perfect for it.
Right, yeah.
No, not happening.
Not happening. No, so there is a mechanic where you can reveal. Oh, well, hold on. We'll talk about mechanics in a second. Right now, the splash damage cleaving a whole lot of quasis that were on the rally point. Not exactly the most.
Very much prepared for that counterattack.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Still good, right? He still has the triple Spraith. That's going to be more than enough to ward him off. And he is going for the Den. We don't have any tier 2 in sight, but Krankendau is almost at that gas amount, so he will be able to drop the Aureliris for that. Very big step when you end up doing that. Now, obviously, the worker count in favor of his opponent, but if you can get that tech advantage, at some point, your resources are just going to end up being a bit more cost efficient.
Because tech advantage or no, Krankendau has the defensive advantage. Quasless able to keep those Gorgors at bay along with Spraiths. Jakulangski maintaining this contain. The main advantage right now is being able to hold that, taking the third, taking the fourth. Krankendau goes for that Aureliris. I see what you mean about the tech advantage, possibly pushing them in. Jakulangski's economic advantage will be tested by that if it comes up.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he ended up investing a bit more Vespian into Hydras, Lachisilisks, and of course the Larvos, because it's 125 gas just for that one structure alone. So it's looking a little rough for him if he wants to try to bank in there. I guess instead he wants to see if he can push out. But remember, the Gorgs are here threatening a bit of a counterattack. Right now they just picked the
counterattack, possibly harassment, straight up. Spraith's the only thing keeping that at bay.
Yeah, they'll be warded off by the Hydras.
Krankendau, well-planned defenses are keeping them in this game.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, they're definitely staring down the barrel. It looks like Jack is going to be content to stick at tier 1 as well. Going for the upgraded Den, that's going to effectively give him another air unit to make, the Skithracore, which deals a little bit of crowd control damage in a straight line after it attacks. Unfortunately for Krankendau, he goes for the Gorger Core of his own. It ends up getting immediately picked by the Hydras. We're seeing the full spread of tier 1 for now.
Definitely a solid demo game. If you're curious, what is Zerg like in Cosmonarchy Brood War? This appears to be the game to find it.
Yeah. Pretty interesting stuff. I mean, all we can dream for is that it goes for another 20 minutes and we see yet another Zerg Tier 3 game. People were saying that was a myth. We started to see it a bit more often. Well, we'll see if these Gorger Cores go extinct in the meanwhile, though. Jack is last of his air units going to get pressured off. And this is still a deadly-looking attack, but the armies are kind of split up in the middle here.
Yeah, Krankendau has definitely the positional advantage. Jakulangski they're looking to go for the cliff, but that's not going to be motivating. I mean, why would Krankendau go that way? Krankendau goes straight to Jakulangski's base. Jakulangski, you can't decide if they want to go straight into the army or swing around to the third first. Ultimately decided to swing around to the third, but it's such a long way around. Krankendau has all the time in the world to take out Jack's fourth, threaten Jack's third, and more importantly, set up their own third. Finally, they have been spending the entire game on 2 bases.
Yeah, that's right.
Finally, they've been given the opening to take that third.
We'll talk about an opening. I mean, you're saying one Spraith here for Jack is all that he's got, and those Gorgs saunter on in. They can pick Larvosks, they can pick workers. Most you can do here is try to burrow and hope that Ovolith doesn't come in for detection. Meanwhile, a counterattack happening in the middle of the map. It's a little bit sloppy, though. Those Hydras just on attack move, cleaning up endless amounts of Zethra-cores.
Oh, no, don't rally like that. Not like that.
Yeah, talk about a messy game, huh?
So much. That was, there was an army advantage for Jack there. It's no longer, but there was briefly.
Well, he might still be able to try to sandwich on in. He's sending the Zets in the top left, expecting that to already have been a base taken, but it's not going to happen. And again, no response whatsoever to the attack in the main. His tech now threatened. That Scab is going to go down, regressing back into the Den. It's pretty much the only silver lining he can take. And yeah, these Gorgs, only 6 of them, really paying for themselves here.
That's more than worth it. Absolutely more than worth it. Jack's entire strategy to this point has been maintaining economic advantage, and now Krankendau has nullified that, taking out all the drones. I mean, that Scab was significant investment on top of that. Taking out a 4th as well. Crank has evened out the game economically, and Jack is going to be playing entirely on a combination of tech and tactics.
Yeah, we'll see what more he can do.
No easy advantages.
Yeah, there's it's very interesting to try to see what the gears are turning like. You know, what's the plan at this point? Can they reset? It's been kind of nonstop action in terms of the sort of trading units in. So that messiness providing a little bit of chaos, a bit of a mineral float for both of our players now while they decide what their next move is. Could certainly see both of them trying to set up another base. It's going to be Jack taking bottom left. realizing he still has the opportunity to extend or maybe reestablish that economic advantage. He's got to rebuild his pool. Obviously, you mentioned the scab going down as well. Definitely a significant advantage.
There's no way Jack can significantly push out in the next 2 minutes.
That's right.
Crank is frame running the map. This fourth here is entirely depending on obscurity for its security.
That's right. Well, we're going to have to see if that's going to be enough. The Gorg's taking a shellacking from a distance. The Bactylisks, as long as the Bactylisk attacks from a range, it will get an extra bounce attack, which is going to significantly increase its crowd control potential. But look at the Kizilisks burrowed on. They do benefit from the cliff advantage, so I feel like this might be the turning point for the game.
Well, jakulangski getting surrounded. Crank getting the surround on jakulangski. Jack pulling back into the circuits. Getting out of the way of Crank's Kizilisks. Crank leapfrogging them forward as Jack is able to hold somewhat of the line, but it's very so few minutes left. Crank breaking the line, the third wide open once again. Jack relying entirely on every single egg to hold defenses as best as possible. Crank still trying to hold the line, does find the fourth, but was distracted away from it. Jack looking to stabilize. A lot of their seasons are regressing, but that's fine. That is tanking damage. That is buying time for the military to get in here. Jack, and have one more cycle they can fight with. Crank, if they can keep pushing one more cycle, they should have this in the bag.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they do.
They do.
That's the game.
GG gets called, and we've got Krankendau taking the victory. Always an interesting time when it comes to the ZVZs that go long. And honestly, I feel like that was a pretty good Tier 1 demo. We didn't end up seeing any Tier 2 after all. I thought for sure Crank would go for it. But hey, you know what? He had faith that despite being down a base for a good amount of time and, down maybe in sort of tech, especially with that scab coming in, I think the pivotal moment for me was the Gorger Core counterattack. He just pushed it in. I thought for sure it was just going to be, swatted away after a little bit. But then that kind of confused Jack enough or set him off balance, and he charges head first, losing most of his military to attack move Hydras.
Honestly, if the Zets hadn't, the Zets wouldn't have been the counter, but they would have been able to hold the line for the Hydras to go back, take out the Gorger Cores, and then rejoin the defenses. Now, without the Zets, Jack really didn't have a whole lot to work with their defense, and the Gorger Cores could just run rampant. Having done that, Jack lost all their economy, and with that, the advantage. And I did appreciate at the very end, though, Jack pulling Crank away from their fourth, because if Crank had gone for the fourth would have been down. Unfortunately, Jack didn't have the army to defend against that, but if they had the army, they would have been able to hold it. It would have been an amazing move to keep their economy advantage.
Yeah, that's right, because then he would have been able to maybe stabilize, get a fourth up for real. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see. We got like a very long amount of time Crank on 2 base. I'd say even though Jack has been around a little bit longer, Crank has been playing a lot more. So his gameplay, I think, kind of shows that he's maybe a little bit more current. However, I don't think ZVZ is a common matchup for either of them. When Nebline was playing Zerg, Jack used to have a lot of ZVZ practice. That was, of course, back in the last major tournament we had. But now, with Nebline being Protoss, I think both of them need a little bit of a brush up in that respect. Love to see the mirrors when they are able to get deep into it. And so I don't know if you have any overall broad thoughts on the game, but I definitely appreciate you joining me for the cast, and pretty cool stuff overall to see such a bloody match at the end of the day, right?
No kidding. Especially Zerg versus Zerg. The fact that it lasted 20 minutes at all is certainly, well, maybe not for CMBW a surprise, but definitely from a StarCraft perspective broadly, that is not Zerg versus Zerg, but
right.
Clearly the approach to tech makes it a lot more flexible. I mean, that's the thing I noticed too, is mirror matches, because there's not a lot of path dependency for building different unit types, you get variety, which is great. Because personally, I think mirror match, I am the weird outlier who likes mirror matches in games.
Right.
At least if the game is to me, mirror matches are the thing that makes the game, that tests how interesting the game is.
Right.
Because you can do a lot of asymmetry, but if the symmetric match, if the gameplay is good enough that the symmetric matchup is still fun, you got something good.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like maybe one of the things, it doesn't necessarily show up in Zerg as much because they always have larvae, so it's just a kind of a given. But the other races in Cosmonarchy having more ways to build extra workers can also mean that maybe there's a comeback potential if you're able to stabilize after losing economy, where normally a lot of that is seen as no, you kind of have to hope your opponent makes a mistake. And in some ways, you are still hoping that they do that if you just take time to build up. But you can choose to alter your game plan to be more defensive, and you have a path to catching up with the worker count. Like as Terran, you can build treasuries for more quarries or something like that, and that's cheaper than going for the full expansion. Yeah, exactly. So
which a lot of games don't.
Right, yeah. I have noticed that a lot of the RTS games, if you get behind in a mirror pretty early on, then you kind of just have to hope that you can outplay your opponent or maybe do some kind of cheeky move. And I mean, those are still valid in Cosmonarchy, but it's nice when there's like legitimate victory conditions that still exist, even in a state of a deficit. So yeah, it's interesting and good to hear the thoughts, of course. Yeah, as you mentioned, when you get the ZVZs that last long or mirror matchups that last long and you get that variety, I think that does significantly inform, I guess, how fun the game will end up being long term, and the fact that there's almost 50 units per race now, for over 50 actually for Terran, and almost there for Protoss and Zerg, still adding a couple more. It's definitely a situation where there's plenty of options. So yeah, cool stuff. Appreciate you joining me for the video.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It was fun. It feels like it's been forever since I've actually had a chance to cast a game.
Well, there you go. Maybe this will be the first time for the floodgates will now open. The waves will part like Moses at the Red Sea, and we'll see lots more Shadow Fury uploads coming up soon. That might happen. So,
maybe. I mean, there's suggestion.
Okay.
A channel on the Discord for people to upload the replays to.
Oh yeah, we actually do have that, but it's a thread, and Discord's very good, so you can't see it. But I will ping you in it, so you're following it.
Okay, cool.
And then you're good to go.
Yeah, that's always the reliable thing, as you well know.
That's right.
It's the thing that kept me streaming for years is finding a way to reliably get replays.
Well, there's plenty of them in there. Some of them have already been tackled, but we'll develop a system. We can get people who claim them. It's been a while since we've had other people, other than myself, active in that effort. So, yeah, appreciate that. Hope to see you around still, and in that case, thanks everybody who watched the video. We've got plenty more coming. We've been doing the daily casts for a while. I think this is 107 or 108. So stick around. Let's see how long the streak can go. GG's.